The presenters of the show, Sonority, would like to thank Senior Helpers of Santa Barbara In-Home Companions for their generous help and support in making the following television program for seniors and their families possible. Senior Helpers of Santa Barbara In-Home Companions, website at www.seniorhelpers.com.
Our guest today is Frank Newton, and Frank does many things. He writes for the Santa Barbara News Press, a wonderful column called Frank Talk.
Yes, Frank Talk for Seniors.
Yes.
7 years I've been writing that.
7 years, and it's a wonderful, wonderful column.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
But you're also the executive director of the Santa Barbara chapter of RSVP, is that correct?
That's correct. Retired Senior Volunteer Program, RSVP.
Right, and May is a special month, I hear.
May is Older Americans Month.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I often refer to is how people don't pay attention enough to all of the wonderful things older adults do in our community. And so Older Americans Month is a time when we can recognize them, when we can, hopefully people will stop and say, well, if there's somebody that should be honored and recognized, this would be a good month to do it. So there's several activities this month, and we're happy to be part of that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So before you tell us about those activities, I was really interested in some of the benefits of volunteering. Besides for helping others, how does it help the person who's doing the volunteering?
It's astonishing.
Yeah.
There have been many, many studies all over the country, local, national studies, and they all come to the same conclusion, that there are tremendous health benefits. People's blood pressure drops, their heart rate improves, they don't get sick as often. Just in general, it's good for their physical health. But it also is good for their mental health, their cognitive skills, because one alternative lifestyle to volunteering is just sitting at home, not doing anything and watching TV. Well, your brain tends to rot.
Right.
Well, what happens is if you're out in the community volunteering, you're learning new things, you're meeting new people. So the brain is being used, you're functioning well, and it's of tremendous value mentally for seniors. And one of the biggest problems seniors face is loneliness. And volunteering is a tremendous way to make new friends. So you go, you work with other seniors and young people, you're doing something that's meaningful, you feel like you have a purpose, and you're working with your friends, and it's a lot of fun. You know, either do that, which is good for you in every way, shape, and form, or just sit at home and sort of grow old more quickly. So I'm a great believer in volunteering. It's a tremendous help to people.
So it helps your brain and it helps your heart, and it must make people feel so good to know that they're doing something that benefits others.
Yeah. They feel they have a purpose, and they know, this is actually something good. I was talking to one of our volunteers who works at Catholic Charities, and a man named Charles LeBou. A lot of low-income families come in. They're looking for food. They have a pantry at Catholic Charities, and he helps, find food for them. And at the end of the day, he says, "God, it makes me feel so good that I'm helping these hungry people, and it's something that's really meaningful." And nobody would pay for that. That's the other thing. The financial problems organizations have, they really need volunteers.
So sometimes it's hard to know who benefits more, I'm sure, the person who is volunteering or the person that's receiving the help.
It's what I refer to as the simple joy of giving, or the simple joy of helping others.
Well, it must make you feel really good to facilitate all of that, too.
Well, I sure try.
Yes.
I sure try.
You've been doing it for how long?
Well, currently this job I've had for about a year. I used to work in Texas dealing with a lot of these programs. That was about 10, 12 years ago. So being back in this business, this area of work, is very enjoyable. It's something I'm very familiar with, and I really believe in. Yeah.
I can tell, and I'm so glad you're here to tell us about it. And could you tell us about the event that you mentioned earlier, some event to honor some of the wonderful volunteers?
Well, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program does a recognition of its volunteers twice a year. And the next one we're doing is this coming week, which is National Volunteer Week, May 7th through the 11th. And it's our way of just saying thank you. It doesn't cost them anything. It's a free lunch. We're doing a very nice lunch at the Holiday Inn in Goleta.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it's going to have a really nice menu. It's a sit-down lunch, and they get all dressed up, and they love it. And it's just a chance for us to pay tribute to them and say, hey, you guys have been volunteering for a year or 6 months. Thank you.
Right.
And I've got some honors for people. I'm going to be recognizing several volunteers that have volunteered for more than 25 years.
Wow.
And one gentleman in particular over 30 years. And we'll also be honoring a lady named Jan Hawkins. She volunteers at Unity Shop in town. She put in this past year over 1,000 hours of volunteer work.
Yes, and did you say you had one person who was in their 90s that was still doing volunteer work?
Yes, there's an organization called Help of Carpinteria. They provide transportation. And one of the people who has been involved in that organization for over 20 years is Dorothy Kendall. In fact, she got an award from the White House last year in honor of her community service for 20 plus years of volunteer service. And she is in her early 90s, and she's still kicking. She's still very active in Help for Carpinteria.
That's wonderful to to have a chance to honor these wonderful souls.
Well, there's a story I'd like to tell, if I may.
Yes.
There's a famous editor who was giving a talk once, and somebody raised their hand during the speech and said, how come you guys in the newspaper business only publicize the bad stories? It's always doom and gloom. It's always negative things. It's always terrible news. And he said, well, we only report on the crashes at airports. We don't report on all the successful landings at the airport. That's not news. But if a plane crashes, well, then that's news. That's why all the news is so negative. Well, definitely one of the successful landings in our community that never gets reported on is all the work that seniors do. It's not a crash. It's a good landing.
Well.
So it's not news. That's why something like Volunteer Week, Seniors, Older Americans Month, those kinds of things where we can recognize and think about our seniors, those things are really of tremendous value.
And you have some new volunteer opportunities opening up, or do you always have?
Well,
places for people to
RSVP,
volunteer?
people say, well, what do you do with RSVP? Okay. Why can't somebody just volunteer on their own? Well, yes, they can. But we have groups of seniors who often, they say, well, I have time, but I'm not quite sure what I want to do or who needs me. And we have a group of nonprofits that are especially needy right now because everybody has gotten hurt financially. And when you are a nonprofit and you lose money, your budget reduces. What do you cut? You don't cut services, you cut staff. So there's fewer bodies around to get the work. Well, the work is still there. Well, what's the answer? Volunteers.
Volunteers.
So RSVP stands in the middle. We try and bring them together. But what we do is, on the one hand, I meet with directors of nonprofits and I say, well, what do you guys need? How are you doing? What do you need people to do? And then I go out and talk to seniors and try and tell them, hey, this organization needs this other organization needs that. And by recommending very reputable organizations, they feel better. Like it's not like, who is this group that I'm going?
Right.
But if I'm able to talk to them and say, listen, we've met with these people, we have a working agreement with them, they're a very worthwhile organization, this would be a great volunteer opportunity, they feel better. So we bring people together like that with these organizations.
This show has been brought to you by Senior Helpers of Santa Barbara County, providing care and comfort at a moment's notice. If you'd like to contact Senior Helpers, you can go to their website, www.seniorhelpers.com, or phone them at 805-966-7100.